Our subscribers get it, with exclusive access to breaking news, briefs, reactions, opinion, and process. iPolitics. Are you up for it?
Hello, I'm James Baxter, editor of iPolitics. Welcome to our first pre-budget podcast for 2014. My guests today are Scott Clark, the former Deputy Minister of Finance and a key architect of the balanced budgets during the Chrétien era of the 1990s. With Scott is one of his most trusted finance experts and longtime government economist, Peter DeVries. Gentlemen, welcome and thank you for joining us. Finance Minister Jim Flaherty has set the budget date for February 11th. In many ways, it's a break from what this government has done during the earlier part of its mandate, starting in 2006. This time around, they've clearly telegraphed the budget, going as early, or signaling as early as during the holidays. And they've made no secret it will likely be branded as a do-nothing budget. What's up, and what do you think's behind this, Scott?
Well, your point is well taken, because Mr. Flaherty has preferred his budgets late March, and his last four budgets were in late March. And of course, that allows a lot of speculation as to, well, what will be in it, and who's going to suffer, who's not going to suffer. And this has all been cut short because he made his announcement, and immediately the reaction, I think, in the media was, well, this will be a do-nothing budget, a bare-bones budget. He's put it out with the Olympics, and people won't be watching it, although I don't think that's an issue, because if he had decided to deliver the budget during a Hockey Canada game, then I think people wouldn't be watching his budget. But so I don't think that's an issue. I think probably in the budget itself will be not much in it, but that's been true of some other budgets as well. But this is really a preamble to the big budget, so to speak, the big political budget of 2015-16. That's what they're headed for. Their political commitment is the elimination of the deficit and the beginning of the election with some promises that they'll implement. So I think he wants to get this behind him, get through it. And as we used to say in finance, you don't want to read about it 2 days later.
I'll bring the economist in on this. Peter, it's been a bit of a slow start to the year, this year around. Plus, some of the lapses they might have had from last year were sopped up by the floods in Calgary and a number of other sort of minor things. How are they doing in their quest for growth and I shouldn't say how are they doing. How are we doing as a country in our quest for growth and a bid for a balanced budget?
Well, they were very fortunate today when the labor force numbers came out, which were a bit of a rebound from what happened in the month of December. And when he first announced the budget date for February 11th, there was a lot of skepticism as to why do it just before the labor force survey comes out, because in the month of December, there was a huge decline in employment. Some of that came back. If it hadn't come back, I don't think this budget would have had any credibility at all. Now, with respect to contingencies, they did book a liability for the Alberta floods and for the railway disaster in their fall update. They put aside nearly $3 billion to pay for that liability. Now, it won't be paid today or tomorrow, it'll be paid out over time, but they have already accounted for that. If they hadn't, the deficit would have been that much lower for 2013-14 if these didn't happen. Economic growth isn't as strong as what people would hoped it would be. The U.S. is still going through a number of issues. Employment growth came out for them today as well. It was somewhat less than anticipated, but it does show that the two economies are going a little differently than one would have hoped. And as the governor had indicated earlier in one of his reports, is that there seems to be a disconnect between economic growth in the United States and our export growth here in Canada. And basically, Canada now is relying on export growth in order to advance the economy. You're having the household sector isn't doing much because of the high debt levels. Governments aren't doing anything because they're retrenching. Business isn't doing much, even though they did reduce tax rates. They're sitting on some cash, but they're waiting to see what's happened or what is going to happen before they're going to commit. The dollar has gone up, which should help exports, but of course will result in higher costs for imports and have a different drag.
The American dollar has gone up, you mean?
American dollar has gone up, yes. Our dollar has gone down.
Our dollar has gone down.
So there's a lot of mixed signals that we're seeing right now.
how difficult is it? When you were plotting budgets, you had a dollar that was jumping all around. I think you were down at 75 or below at some points, and had a dollar come all the way up to near parity.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of amused when in recent weeks when we've been talking, the media have been talking about this plunging dollar, and in the 1990s, when we were able to get rid of the deficit and economic growth was doing really well, and we had done everything people said that we should have done, and our dollar was dropping like a bullet. And we had a hard time explaining that to Mr. Martin, who was minister at the time, when he said, well, why is this happening, right? Because we're doing everything right. And the answer was, well, it's just they're doing it better in the US. But our dollar fell. I can remember this, you know, it was every week. It fell down to, I think, around 62 cents at one time. And then it started eventually going back up. But that's not that long ago. Certainly, it's in my memory. I'd just like to, if I can, pick up on a point that Peter was making, is that there seems to be also a disconnect between the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, recently came out and said they're only forecasting 2.2% growth for Canada for 2014, which is 0.3% below what the Bank of Canada is forecasting, and it's below what the Minister of Finance was forecasting, or assuming rather, in his fall update. So they've come out and said, you're only going to go about 2.2% next year, and even if growth doesn't recover strongly, you know, you can postpone the date of elimination of the deficit. Now, that would fall on deaf ears in Mr. Flaherty's office, but there is kind of an interesting disconnect going on there.
We'll take a quick break here, and when we come back, I'm going to ask you to put on your soothsayer hats and guess what will be the highlights of the budget come Tuesday. We'll be right back.